Hi, I'm Curt Larsen, PhD student in the Educational Leadership Policy Program at Texas Tech University, talking today about the Utah system of higher education and a recent merger that occurred. So the merger took place as a result of some legislation passed in the Utah legislative session in 2020 called Senate Bill 111, Utah Higher Education Amendments. And it merged what had previously been a system of technical colleges, 8 technical colleges across the state, and the 8 degree awarding institutions into a unified system of 16 schools. A few of the purported aims of the merger were to enhance efficiencies and reduce program duplication, but one particular notable I wanted to look into a little bit more deeply is this concept of stackable credentials. I'll speak a little bit more about those in a minute. Just to kind of contextualize the problem here a little bit, here's a quote from Jeff Landward, one of the deputy commissioners of the Utah System of Higher Education, well, the board rather. To seize the advantages of a combined system, the new system must embrace the view that technical and academic education are not mutually exclusive options for students, but are in fact educational opportunities that can complement and build on each other, can provide pathways to better access and outcomes for all students from all backgrounds, and can lead to partnerships within the system that will make higher education more efficient and effective for students moving forward. So let's talk a little bit more about stackable credentials. You might think about the way that an associate's degree in Associates of Science or an Associates of Art partially satisfies the completion of a bachelor's in art or science. And so the idea is to take technical college certificates and other credentials and use those as partial completion of an associate's degree. Now, one of the big challenges is that most of these certificate programs are sort of clock hour or increasingly competency-based credentials rather than sort of academic credit hours. So trying to figure out how those credits should count and to what, and in particular, allowing them to count for something more meaningful than merely an elective credit has been one of the challenges in sort of sorting out, one of the limitations, I guess I would say, in terms of figuring out how to award stackable credentials between a technical college credit and an associate's degree or going further. And so one of the challenges, I think, for this work is the idea that these institutions that have historically been very much at arm's length with each other need to collaborate. And so I used Shu, Jones, Torres, and Ku's work in 2017 on kind of a post-conventional view of collaboration, both within and across organizations, as being integral to organizational improvement. So looking at both the individual institutions and their organizational efforts, as well as across the new organization of the Utah system of higher education, these 16 schools, and kind of looking at what they are doing to actually work together, play well in the sandbox, as opposed to being still more competitors than collaborators. So I selected the only comprehensive community college, Salt Lake Community College, within the state of Utah, specifically because it's the only one that should be able to play well within its own sandbox, in that it has both a technical college component and the degree awarding associate degree as part of the fabric of the institution currently. I chose a purposive sampling arrangement, and you see some of the individuals that I interviewed here. So the Assistant Director for Data Science Analytics, who does business analytics, Lionel Nieto, he's specifically tasked with overseeing the sort of School of Applied Technology kind of merging into this new technical college setup. Jennifer Saunders, who's the Dean over the Applied Technology programs and will be, as of July 1 in 2022, the Dean of the newly minted Salt Lake Technical College, which is part of Salt Lake Community College. The sort of local government lobbyist for Salt Lake Community College, his name is Scott Brown, our Assistant Vice Provost for Curriculum, Articulation, and Governance, Rachel Lewis, who has obviously all the articulation and sort of connectivity between programs. And then also our AVP for Budget and Finance, Dr. Darren Marshall, who also has some experience at the Utah System of Higher Education at the head office. So I had kind of a 45-minute interview protocol in which I'd written out specific questions that were sequenced in an order that I wanted to kind of get into. And then as the interviews occurred, I would sort of follow up with additional questions that were merited based on the kind of knowledge of the person I was interviewing. My research questions: 1, how will the Utah System of Higher Education merger aim to optimize the system of higher education in Utah, and specifically at Salt Lake Community College? I also wanted to know just how important stackable credentials were to the UC merger for SLCC. And then finally, I didn't mention this previously, but the Utah System of Higher Education had been unified when I was a kid and most of my adult life, and then was broken into these two separate, the degree awarding and the technical colleges, in the early 2000s. And now here we are in 2020 with a merger happening again, and now trying to figure out what this unified system looks like. So my third research question was that, given Utah has kind of ping-ponged back and forth between having these singular and dual systems of post-secondary education, how should the state finally commit to one approach or another? And I didn't get too far into this research question with the interviewees that I had just within Salt Lake Community College, but it is an ongoing professional interest of mine. So anyway, the results, not surprisingly, people had some useful things to say about stackable credentials generally. There was this theme of exploring ways to help students with easier on and off ramps into and out of higher education, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then also this sort of sneaking suspicion that there were further changes that might be coming to the system of higher education in the future. So stackable credentials. Everybody loves them, but most people don't really know how important they are to students, or how many students smooth stackable credentials might impact. And mostly there was this acknowledgement that there's this need to formalize these credentials by that they're kind of specific to industry and sector. You might think about how a typical associate's degree is going to be broken into about 60 credits, 30 credits of which are general education, 30 of which are specific to the discipline. And so most of these stackable credentials would be pretty heavy on the knowledge specific in the discipline and pretty light on the general education. Particularly given that most certificates are awarded within existing technical colleges that are not degree awarding institutions. There was a recognition that we need to do a better job within the system to design for a larger percentage of students entering and exiting and kind of between degrees. This certainly points in the direction of having stackable credentials, having certificates that partially satisfy an associate's degree in greater numbers. Also, that there might be it might be better to have more credentials between degrees to help sort of grease the skids of the job progression or career progression that most individuals might have in today's economy. And finally, acknowledging that when you have students who are coming to a college or university at 30 or 40 or 50, that perhaps we need better systems of prior learning assessment. It's pretty easy to say, okay, you have a bachelor's degree, you're qualified to enter a master's program. But when most Utahns do not have a actual degree, they have some schooling, figuring out what that schooling means or what other experiences they might have, say they've been in the military, to give them some credit upon entry to make their degree progression smoother. So kind of overall findings included that, yes, stackable credentials are important, but there's very broad disagreement about how significant that is or for how many. One of my questions was, sort of on a scale of 1 to 10, how significant are stackable credentials? My average score was about 7.5, but that's because several people said 9 or 10, and one person said 0. And then I want to talk a little bit more about, too, this feeling that perhaps all of the technical colleges will be magically granted community college status, or that there will be a thou shalt not directive from the state about some of the four-year institutions no longer being able to grant certain types of certificates. One of the lessons that I learned from this is that it's really difficult to assess the real demand. Even within Salt Lake Community College, there was little universal understanding. The data science analytics guy couldn't tell me how many students this would impact. So there's a real challenge, I think, in assessing how much of a value add this merger is going to be at the individual level to individual students who might want to take advantage of stackable credentials in pursuit of an associate's degree at a later point in time, to various industry sectors, and even to the institutions that are impacted by this merger. One final lesson learned, I really wish that I had spent more time developing the theoretical frameworks that I wanted to rely on for this work. And as I move forward into my dissertation, that's a clear takeaway for me, is that I need to have a better sense of kind of where I'm starting, where I'm going to end up, and seeing the linkages between the theoretical framework and my research questions. So that's my pilot study. If anyone has questions or would like more information, I would love to connect with you either via email or over the phone. So there's my contact information right there. Thanks very much.